I didn't know what my dream job was coming out of grad school, but when I got the job offer to work with addiction, I knew it wasn't that. Initially, when I graduated with my master's degree and was looking for a job, the first job offer I got, though, was not in the field that I wanted. And it was actually in the addiction field. And I was, 25, 26 at that point, kind of naive in my thinking, and just wasn't interested in working with addiction from what my perspective was about addiction. But it was also the only job that I could get. So I reluctantly accepted a job thinking that it's easier to get a job that I wanted if I already had a job. So I took the job and started understanding, learning, studying addiction, and was kind of fascinated by what I was learning. And in some ways, I kept asking myself, why does this make sense for me? Even in my personal life, I found it helpful what I was learning, and I didn't consider myself an addict. I didn't even think that I knew addicts. And so it was puzzling to me how it was making sense. So a couple of things. I've been doing this for 26 years. A couple of things that I've realized over the time that I've been doing it is, number one, I do think that recovery principles are applicable to everyone because I think we need recovery from life in general. I think things happen to us, we experience things, we don't understand things, and recovery principles across the board are going to be helpful for people. But I also started to understand my story differently. And I started to realize that I did know addicts. In fact, I grew up in a home with somebody who had multiple addictions and had covered it, maybe not so well, but enough that I didn't know what was happening. As I started to put the puzzle pieces together and understand the family that I grew up in, I started to see that story differently and understand why addiction recovery was important and made a difference in my life as well. And I've actually spent 26 years working in the addiction field and loving it. And I think we're understanding more about addiction. And so that kind of piques my interest. I don't feel like my job gets old or that my understanding, that I've covered everything out there that there is to know. It's continually evolving. And so I'm continually challenged and I'm continually learning. And for me, that's fascinating and that's satisfaction right there. But I also think that I started to understand addiction more in terms of trauma and more in terms of something went wrong for these folks early on in their life. And understanding that story, figuring out the puzzles, and putting all of the pieces together into something that made sense was also very intriguing for me. I tell people, I've never been a puzzle person in terms of putting together a jigsaw puzzle. I used to even tell my mom, that gives me headaches. I don't like doing that. But this kind of puzzle, helping people put the pieces together, to me, that's fascinating and it never gets old.